I want to chat with you about something this morning that I'm hoping will really be a blessing to your week this week. I want to talk about being a first timer in your family. You can call it being a pioneer. I don't care what you call it. Don't call me late for dinner. Have you ever? Oh, that's a bad joke. I don't care what you call me. Just don't call me late for dinner. Have you ever heard that? That's really lame. Sorry, mom joke. Okay, so listen. I put a post up on Facebook real recently, and I just said, um, I was quoting some things out of my book, Fear's Not the Boss View, where I basically said that some of you are the first person in your family to go to college. You're the first person in your family to buy a home. You're a first generational believer. You're the first one to be a Christian. You're the first one in your family to be debt free. Maybe the first one to stay married. Maybe the first person in your family to be a business owner. And I was basically just saying that anytime you are the first in your family, in your bloodline to do something, that there are some extra fun, like levels of resistance, pushback, opposition, forces that are resisting you that people who are not first timers just don't get. And I kind of talk in Fear's Not the Boss of You about my personal experience and Jason's personal experience, both of us. Jason's my husband. For those of you who only know his name as Mr. Magic, and by the way, if you don't know why he's called that, it was a Facebook follower. Her first called him Mr. Magic because my business was called the Magic Brush, so she named him Mr. Magic, and it caught on like wildfire. But his name is actually Jason. That is, I'm not actually married to Mr. Magic. So, I mean, I'm married to Mr. Magic, but his name is really Jason. Anywho, I digress. So, in our family, Jason and I are the first to do many things. And so I know sometimes it feels like, and I bet those of you listening right now, you may know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, my Lord, it's like swimming upstream. It feels like trying to go completely against the current. At times it feels very lonely. And at times it feels like, oh my gosh, it's so hard. Like, why even bother? And so this is one of the reasons why I added a part in Fear's Not the Boss of You book about being a first timer, and also have talked about it on social media, because I know how hard different things have been for him and I, to have a successful business, to stay married, to, be the first to do a lot of different things. And this isn't about, our family, so I don't want to take the conversation there. But in being the first, there is just some additional. Can you hear Ari screaming in the background? Ava, I'm ready. Ava, I'm ready. I'm just going to leave that in there because you know what? This is life in 2020, working full-time from home with kids here. But there's a saying I want to share with you that I think will be an encouragement to some of you. Maybe. The saying is that the first one through the window gets bloody, meaning the first one is always the one that's going to take the crap. The first one's always going to be the one that gets beat up. The first one is going to be the one that always feels so much opposition. It's going to be the first one, because the first one has to break the window. The first one is going to be the one that, gets ripped up, gets hurt, and all of the others are going to come after. Now, listen, there's a song right now that I just cannot get enough of. Every time I play it, like my spirit just dances inside of me. It's by Elevation Church. I want you to go to Spotify right now. It's called The Blessing. So it's by Carrie Job. It's Elevation Worship. It's called The Blessing. But there's a line in there I want to read you, which is, may his favor be upon you in 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and their children and their children. And every time we get to that verse, like something just leaps up inside of me. And here's why it does. Because I think sometimes we have this like thinking that our life matters, of course, but I think sometimes we think really small in terms of understanding the generational repercussions of what we do as parents, and how the things that we do are going to open so many doors or close so many doors for our kiddos. And that sometimes the thing that you're trying so hard to do, sis, whether it's start that business, whether it's get through college in the middle of a stinking pandemic, whether it is you're trying to be the first one in your family to get debt free, you're the first one in your family to say, no, we are not getting divorced, we're actually going to go to therapy and fix our own crap and become grown-ups and stay married. Like if any of those things is you, I need for you to know you're not just changing things for you. I promise you, you are changing it for your children and their children and their children and their children. This is generational stuff we're dealing with. It's generational. And so I hope that it will be an encouragement to somebody who's listening today, who's wondering, okay, why am I getting so much like resistance in XYZ, whether it's the business or the finances or the relationship or whatever? Why does it feel like every time I take 2 steps forward, I have to take 1 step back? Because the enemy doesn't want you changing your family for generations. Here's anytime anymore that I'm seeing stuff with my natural eyes, I'm trying to train myself to go 1 step deeper, 1 layer deeper, 1 thing deeper. Friend, it's not just about you giving your life to Christ. It's you give your life to Christ, and now the generations coming behind you, it's going to be so much easier for them to be a Christian. It's not just about you being the first one to start a business in your family and keeping it afloat. It's not just about that. It's about that now you've changed some things. You've broke off some generational curses in your family. You've opened some doors for your family for generations to come. There are things in my life that have come pretty easy to me. There really are. Anybody can look at their life and look back and go, okay, you know what? This is not something I struggle with. I just had some weird favor in that area. Like, thank you, Lord. That's not something I struggle with. And I know in my knower, you guys, that the only reason I have some of those graces and favors in my life are obviously because of the mercy and grace of God, but it's also because of what was passed down to me from generations. So, I think we talk a lot about generational blessings, and that's, one hand of it, and the other side of it is generational curses. And so if you're trying to be the first in your family to do anything, just know the reason the enemy is fighting you so hard right now is because he does not want you to change things for generations and generations and generations to come. Listen, there's a price that you have to pay for being first. There just is. There's also an incredible blessing on not giving up and being the first. And so I want you to be encouraged today. For those of you who are feeling like, oh my gosh, the resistance is it's so much, it's so heavy, it's all of the things. I want you to understand that you're not fighting against flesh and blood. I hope that you know that. Your fight is not against flesh and blood. This is what Ephesians 6:12 says. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood. You're not fighting against that college dean. You're not fighting against the person that won't give you your business license. You're not fighting against, the person that won't give you the title for your vehicle. That's not who you're really fighting against. The scripture says your struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Friend, what an honor it is to you to go first in your family. Oh, it's so hard. Girl, I just want to give you a big old bear hug and say, I know how hard it is to stay the course when you're bloody and you're tired and all the things. And it feels lonely. It feels lonely. Nobody wants to go through something that nobody else around them has gone through. This is one of the reasons, by the way, just a little side note, that us being in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic is so hard on a lot of people. We don't have a rule book to go by. We've never been here before. And when you've never been somewhere before, you find yourself grasping at things and trying to figure out what works. And there's mistakes that are made, and it's painful and it's hard, and there's all these things. It's a lonely feeling when you have nothing to like go back and measure something by. And if you're the first one in your family to do anything that your family lineage has not done before, you don't have anything to like measure it against. You're a lone ranger, a pioneer in that area. And I just want to reach out through this podcast right now and just give you some knuckles, just give you a high five, just give you a bear hug. Keep going. There is so much more at stake for you and for your children and for your children's children, for their families and their families and their families. Don't grow weary and doing good, sis. So much love to you right now. I hope that this podcast touched a sweet, sweet spot in your soul today and encouraged you to keep going. So much love. Till next week. Bye-bye.